Hi yogis and hi friends. This is a really quick little video. A friend of mine fell off a ladder today while painting. I think thankfully he'd done his third coat. And I just wanted to remind you about the change in attitude towards when you hurt yourself. I had a really bad fall cross-country skiing a few years ago, and I had to walk or ski back to the lodge. There was no option. I didn't think I'd be able to, but I did, and I think that really helped with my healing. So the old adage of rest, ice, compress and elevate is not always correct with what happens. So for instance, if you've fallen off a ladder or you just fall down, and most of us tend to fall and we try to protect our sacrum, so we kind of fall sideways usually, and the first thing you might have noticed that went down was probably my hand. So therefore there's going to be some probably something going on either in my hand, or if I fell back to protect my wrist, I might have fallen on my elbow. But it's not just the elbow. Normally what takes the brunt of it, if I did that in slow motion, I would be falling down and maybe my shoulder, or maybe my shoulder again, and maybe my head would get a little bit of a whiplash, a side whiplash there. The impact obviously on the hip or on your back if you fall down. It's not just the place of impact, it's what happens with the head and the shudder that goes all the way up the spine. So if that was my fall, I'll try and recreate that again. If I fell down trying to protect myself like this, there would be a little bit of reverb there, but it might not even be from my head doing that. It might just be from the weight of my body connecting with the earth, and then this reverberation going up the body. So of course, first you want to be really careful coming off the floor. You might want to get somebody to help you up. I remember with my ski accident, I just lay down flat on that snow for at least 10 breaths. So maybe the first thing is to breathe really deeply. Breathe. Just get your body back to a calm state so it can start figuring out what needs to be done. Your body knows way better than you. Secondly, move slowly. Movement. And again, breathe. Keep breathing. As you're breathing, especially deep breathing, you're getting oxygen to the right places. Somebody might help you up, get yourself to up off the floor. With this fall, maybe just finding your shoulders. Of course, the place of impact is going to be the place that's talking to you the most. Take that area, just work around that area to start, just the peripheral. So finding the shoulders, maybe just rolling your wrists. Even though I fell on this one, I'm going to move both arms. I'm going to try and find symmetry, just find normal movement. And the sooner you can get to normal movement after injuring yourself, the better, because otherwise this is going to freeze up. So maybe you would find, okay, I can do a little bit more movement. Let's see how it feels. These muscles and fascial areas that are connected to my area of impact. Let's see. Breathe, move, breathe, observe, breathe. What are you feeling? Does this movement feel okay? Does this movement feel okay? All right, upper body seems to be okay. Let me just, you can always come back to your neck, but if you can, maybe just do a couple of neck rolls. You're going to be feeling what's happening in your neck, but at the same time, as you move, you're going to feel how all that connects to the area of impact as well. If you feel able to, maybe coming into a side stretch, breathe, observe. So move, observe, let's say M-O-B, mob, move, observe, breathe. Take a few deep breaths one side, come back, maybe bring your head back, find neutral, find the other side, move, observe, breathe. 3 and maybe 5 breaths, especially if you can start to feel something's going on here. See if you can just find where it is, come back. And then finally, the area of impact, walk around the house, do some knee lifts, anything that you can feel has been connected here. So not connected, impacted here. So maybe just something gentle, some little lunges and things. And then I was very fortunate at the ski hill, there was a hot sauna there. So I went and lay in the sauna and I did some stretches in the sauna, and I really think that helped me. I'm still working with that injury. There was huge impact because they say it takes 6 years for fascial injuries. So maybe the next thing is get into an Epsom salts bath, a warm bath, and never going into too much, never going into pain. If you feel like you'd still like to do some movement, you could maybe try lying down to rest the spine or stretch out the spine, get the knees onto a chair or something, stretch out your neck, something like this. Lie down, bring your back into neutral, allow the vertebra of the back and the muscles of the back to release a bit. And then you could try something like this, just crossing one ankle over the other thigh. Maybe you can work with this. Move, observe, breathe, move, observe, breathe, both sides. You'll be very interested to notice. You would think that that other side would have not had much impact, or you might think that this side's going to have more impact. It's always very interesting, and try to remember what you observe, perhaps even write it down so that you can tell your physiotherapist when you have your appointment exactly what you felt right away. And perhaps you could do, if you find this kind of movement or this kind of stretch helpful, you could do it again a couple of times before you see your physio. You might have to have at least a couple of overnights before you see your physio, and it's good to tell them how the injury changes and how the movements that bug you change. And so now I'm just doing some really gentle little twists here. You don't have to go as deep as I'm going, but I'm looking for mobility. So I'm rolling my head the opposite way. I'm trying to just keep my spine from stiffening up, and it's not really my spine, it's actually all the fascia, the multifida, and all the muscles and tendons that run up and down the spine and all the way to the neck. So we're looking at releasing those areas. And then if you can, pardon me, something symmetrical. If you're very flexible in the back of the legs, you can have your legs a little bit closer together. If you want them a bit apart, have them a bit apart, maybe just leaning onto something. And if you can, eventually dangling to shake the head. And again, if you've got something lower and your body is able to go lower, you could try with resting elbows on the blocks, or even resting your shoulders on the blocks and giving traction to this area of the body so that it doesn't seize up, trying to protect this area that's been impacted. So you're trying to bring stretch and reminding the body where its natural element is. Deep breath. And not going into pain, but going into a place where you can still breathe and still feel, you might feel nothing in the stretch. It's fine, breathe. It's the next day that you start to feel the impacts of all that has happened. So finding softness in the neck, especially in the neck. There's always something that goes on in the neck afterwards. And then staying there as long as you can without feeling dizzy. If you do get dizzy, keep 90 degrees. If you've got glaucoma or detached retina or just general low blood pressure where you can't be upside down, feel free to come into a stretch this way. It's still beneficial to you. The other way you could do it, I'm going to come up super slow here. So if you've got an injury, you might need to bring your hands onto your knees, draw the belly to the spine, try and activate the transverse abdominis to come up. If the other thing that you could do is what I was doing earlier, is lie down flat. After you've had a bath, after you've done some movement and some stretches, lie flat, elevate the legs. Elevator is still a very recommended thing to do, and the one thing you might want to try and elevate is your wrist or the arm that you landed on. So maybe put a couple of pillows next to you, elevate the arms just to let the lymphatic system draw away the impact. Another thing to remember is inflammation is good. It's water being brought to the area of injury. You want inflammation in that area because we need to hydrate, and the water comes with the blood and it brings the nutrients in, and it's also an opportunity for the body to flush out bruising and all that sort of thing. So moving, observing, breathing, observing, heat, nice warm bath, observing, elevation, observing, breathing, repeat. And hydration, sorry, one of the biggest things, hydration. I hope this was helpful. Obviously if you hurt an ankle or you hurt something in your extremities, those need to be elevated. But again, and if you can't walk on something, you can't walk on it. But don't think that mobilizing everything else that's not in pain is a bad thing as well. Keep mobile, hydrate, repeat.